And now I will pass the mic to the amazing, fantabulous, fabulous, fantastic. I mixed them. Saida Leah Tatufu Birch. Give it up for Sai.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Let's see, these chairs kind of low, y'all. Okay. How y'all doing? Y'all need to stand up? Why don't we stand up? It's been a little while. Good morning, good morning. And as y'all are standing, I'm going to ask my folks to come to the stage. Michele G, Michael Blake, Darrick Hamilton. Maybe wave your hands in the air. Wave like I just don't care. And if you like shrimp and grits and all the things, let me see you say, oh yeah. Yeah, I'll take some more. All right. Good morning, good morning. You got to see. Okay, I have the honor and privilege as they get their mics. And as we say in the Bay, I'm hella excited to have this conversation. I got my bassist up here with me from Oakland, from the town. We have our brothers from across the land, from the East Coast, sitting up here. And we are going to talk a little bit about culture, about consciousness, about capitalism, and we had this amazing conversation that came just before us with Emile and Dr. Davis, and I think a lot of what Emile talked about resonates with what we're going to talk about today. And if y'all were here yesterday, you heard a lot from Michele sharing about this like intrinsic faith and belief in entrepreneurship and business. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then Brother Blake always reminds us that we can invite consciousness into capitalism. And I think you say we can make money and do good. So we're going to talk about that. And so I am excited. Their bios are in your program. But before we get into that full conversation, I want to level set just a bit with our economist friend, Darrick Hamilton, Dr. Darrick Hamilton from the New School. Right.
Oh, Lord. Get the vibe right there.
The economy, we witnessed the government nearly shut down, and we are a couple of weeks away from it potentially shutting down again. And so when we talk about the economy and we talk about the soul of the economy and if the economy is moral, can you just set the stage for us? Like, what is this term moral economy, and what should we as a people be thinking about as we are fighting for a human rights economy?
Well, thank you. And let me say, it never gets old and tired. I love speaking to this type of audience, and I love being on stage with these people who've accomplished a lot and look like me. Let me say that, we began with some nice accolades about me being an economist. One task I want to do is demystify economics. One of the problems is that we create this notion that economics is a scientific endeavor devoid of norms. We apply scientific methods, but an economy is a values proposition. An economy is a political construction. So we get to choose and define the economy that we want. I think we all need to grasp that. So, you all should be engaged in economics. And the term that was presented, a moral economy. So that has connotations towards religion, towards spirituality, towards morality, philosophy, etc. I know I'm on stage with people that are really grounded in religion, values, and spirituality, as well as economics. And matter of fact, I probably shouldn't even separate them. But one statement I just want to also lead with is perhaps economists should not cede the space of morality only to the clergy community, and the clergy community should not cede the space of economics only to the economists. They're inseparable. It's oxymoronic to say moral economy. It is a problem that we have to add the word moral to economics. But I think what we're here, well, I know what we're here to talk about is what can we create that can better work for all of us and generate a society where we don't have this grave inequality that we have, a society where one's race, gender, sexual identity will not have any transactional value whatsoever. None of us are asking us to give up blackness, to give up our sexual orientation or our gender, but we don't want to engage in some transaction where that has relevance. That's a problem. But the aesthetic, the culture, the affinity we have to our heritage, that's all valuable. So, at the risk of being long-winded, I'm going to stop, but just basically say a moral economy is essentially one that allows people to, in an authentic way, reap the rewards of their ingenuity, reap the rewards of their effort, and have the necessary ingredients, which is essentially resources and structures, so that they can thrive, so that we can contribute productively in social settings. I think that is not the only essence of us as people, but that is a major essence. We're all born with a desire to want to contribute, and I think an economy should generate that.
And so I want to come to Michele next, because yesterday you mentioned, or you shared, that you left the corporate world, 5 days ago? Something like that. And now you are the founder or a co-founder, as you shared yesterday, of the Expectant group. And if y'all were in the room yesterday, if you caught it, you referenced one of my favorite scriptures, John 10:10, that the thief comes only to kill, steal, and destroy. But the second part of that is that I come so that you may have life and have it more abundantly. And you talked a lot about setting expectations. And so what Darrick, you just uplifted around, they're inseparable in many ways. So faith and growing the economy. Can you talk about the Expectant group and really underscoring that expectancy, the abundance, you contributing to a multi-billion-dollar industry in the way that you have, and how that will in turn, you're bringing that to not only build your own group, but a collective, if you will.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks all of you guys for coming back out again today. I literally was so exhausted as I couldn't even move out of the theater when we were talking about the 1619 Project, and it's a pleasure to be with you gentlemen. This is my sister here. So I just want to talk about this, and I'll talk about the Expectant group, but this is not a PSA, right? This is an opportunity for us to say that we as a community have always been conscientious. The challenge is that we do business every day with people that aren't. And oftentimes we're so conscientious that we can't even build our businesses because we're looking out for everybody else. And we need to understand the culture in which we're playing, which is a capitalistic society that's looking out for themselves. And the only thing that matters to a lot of the companies that I've ever worked for was the bottom line. So we have to toggle our love for God, our faith, wanting to do good, wanting to uplift the community, but also saying it's okay to make money. I need everybody to say it's okay to make some money. It's okay to make money. Like we got to get out of it. Listen, everybody in this room, whether you have a nonprofit, you're starting your business, whatever you're doing, we got to make money. And when we do, what are we doing with it? And how are we going about doing that? So I want to say that I launched this firm. I've been in the business for a long time, the media business. My literal job was to take people's money, Coca-Cola, Verizon, whatever they want to do, allow them to buy advertising space on all of the networks that I bought on to reach oftentimes the people that are in this room, because y'all got a lot of money, you drive culture, you're building content, so this is a really valuable audience. And I realized, why am I generating $1 billion for them when I could be doing it for myself, hire people who look like me, and build a business that looks like me for my community, right? So that's exactly what I'm doing. So I decided to represent creators in the marketplace that I know can go on CBS, ABC, NBC, or other places. Let's get them distribution so clients now can pay us, is the bottom line. The other piece of my business is I decided to be in the tech space, so I invested in a small ad tech company that generates about 1 billion impressions a month. That means eyeballs, that means opportunities for clients to give money, for them to have a conversation with back-end publishers so that publishers can also get paid. So I decided to get smart. The reason I'm telling you that is because when we sat here and listened to Emil, he said something really interesting. He said he saw a community that wasn't served. He had all the experience in the world. He aligned those things, and now he's making money for himself and doing good and telling a good story. Every single person in this room, if they just sit down and pay attention as you're sitting at your desk or trying to build businesses, we all been given some gift. I just decided to walk in mine because I believed I was worthy, and I believe my community was. And so with all the information you're getting over the next, well, yesterday and today, how are you going to take the time to see how you reside in the space, your own personal space, your unique value proposition? What can you create? And who is your customer? And then how do you talk to them? Really, that's what this is about, right? Because we know you're going to move conscientiously. We know you have moral fibers. We were born and built like that. But how do you make money and then grow the kingdom, your kingdom? I think that's what the conversation is, at least for me today.
Thank you for that. And I think that's a good segue coming to you, Michael, because you've brilliantly curated spaces. I mean, your background is in journalism, as well as in politics, but you have a way of bringing people together to build community, to build a collective and coalition. And so can you talk to us about what it means to be in space, to leverage, you talked about with Lakeisha yesterday, social capital, and how we capitalize off of with the collective, off of the collective and together in the intentional spaces that you've created as it contributes to a greater economy.
Peace, family.
Peace.
Let's give roses before we get going. What Dr. Sai is doing with Dreamkeeper is a blessing. And being unabashed and unadulterated of where we're going to do to help our people, right? Michele, I've been trying to get to connect with you for one of the reasons around sports and media for something I'll mention. So it's a blessing that we're able to be on the same stage right now. And I want us to, again, we gotta get better about receiving our roses. $1 billion that has happened for companies because of your excellence, right? And so let's recognize that. That's right, clap it up right there, you know, and Darrick's been killing the game for years. Our mutual friend Maya Wiley at New School and what she's doing on TV, but you know, it takes intentional space of having our own in the room when it comes to the economy, because you know, we said a lot on our campaigns, numbers don't lie, people do, right? So you got to have the right people in the room when we're talking about our numbers. To the question from Dr. Sai, I'm real intentional of how do we use our space for our people. And the topic described of conscientious capital, real or not, like the reality is there's a paradox within that. You know, the definition of it is around able to do what's right. So it's hard to do what's right within a system where the intent is on quantitative metrics. I focus a lot on consciousness to capitalism, because consciousness to me is, am I aware of my settings to change things? So what we do a lot within our team at Atlas, and we've created a space with Dr. Sai's question, is called Kairos. Kairos is the other definition of time. Too often we talk about chronos. Chronos is the chronological order. Kairos means the opportunities to create moments. And we wanted to create a space that we are the conscious capital of color and the conscious capital for color. Because a lot of times in our estimation, our theory of change has nothing to do on are we smart enough and capable enough. It's that we're not connecting one another to do these deals, right? And so when we think about that, we have to be connected on how this all began. Police forces didn't just start out as is, they started as slave patrols in the Carolinas. The intent was to keep people down. to sustain an economic system. I'm wearing this for Northwestern because I'm a Northwestern alum. We have our homecoming this weekend. We're hosting Howard, but the beauty of it is one of our alum is the first black president in the NFL, Jason Wright. And Jason's my line brother. He grew up in California. The relevance to that is that he was a partner at McKinsey, and he left McKinsey because he wanted to go to the Commanders to be a part of building a new stadium for the DMV that focused on what are we doing to get black and brown folk money. Because we were sick and tired of watching that we were just playing the game and we weren't the ones winning the economic game. I'm also a minister. You probably picked that up from my cadence right there, right? But like the framing of we can't talk about the premise of consciousness without recognizing, again, the intentionality of keeping people down. Physically, they were trying to have a cross on Jesus to keep him down. They didn't think he would rise back up. But there was an intentionality of the system. Pontius Pilate listened to the crowd rather than doing what was right, right? And so in all these different aspects, our vision is how do we create intentional spaces to shift the narrative? So, for example, I'm going back from here, for y'all saw me lugging in my suitcases because I'm going back to Northwestern today because we are trying to build a new football stadium, which would be the largest economic project to black and brown businesses in the history of this country for a college sports project. At a minimum, be $208 million that would be spent on construction and professional services, because a lot of times we don't talk about professional services. And the people that are opposed to this are the folks that live in the community where there's already a stadium who are saying, we don't want concerts. Now, I have a feeling that if it was Taylor Swift and U2, they wouldn't have an issue, right? But it is the perception that folks are gonna show up that are gonna disrupt my community to hold this down. And in the same manner, us being able to do what's right economically was not changing that narrative. So to the question, we have to be more intentional of the spaces that we create and be, to Michele's point, be very direct. Making money is good. Stop acting like it's not. That is a white supremacist mindset that makes you think that something is bad about making money. How else are you gonna pay for your things? The fundamental question around equity and the physical ability to have equity is home ownership. Well, the premise of that is how do we break that? So from home ownership and creating those spaces, we find those spaces of doing that. You wanna buy a home, you gotta have money. You wanna go to a good school, probably gotta have money. You wanna have better cars, you gotta have money. So the reality is creating those spaces of us understanding who's doing these pieces, which is why this is so essential. And to Dr. Davis, I was looking to see where she went right there, right? So when we talk about reparations and what is happening right now, and Nicole said this last night, it is silly for us to talk about anything else but reparations when you're in a society that for centuries has held you down economically. And so we have a responsibility to be in curated spaces for that purpose.
And it looks like you wanna chime in, Darrick, but I do wanna stay on the consciousness piece in terms of being aware of the setting and being in places and spaces where we may be able to influence the setting. And I think this Pathways to Parity, being the third annual one that we've had, is very intentional. Because the Salesforce Tower is in San Francisco and we go into community and sometimes it feels like we get feedback that it might as well be 5,000 miles away if community cannot access that space. Yeah. And so as you all are in the spaces and places, Darrick, I surely want to hear your response to Michael's comments, but also want to understand how you all are leveraging your role in the spaces and places to elevate the collective as well.
Well, it's your show. I grabbed this mic for comfort, to be frank. How do I? So I'm hell-bent on building human rights economies. And inclusive in that is a notion that economics, politics, and race, or broadly speaking, the ways in which we divide people into identity groups. In the United States, clearly race has been the paramount divider, or a paramount divider, are inseparable and are aligned for intentional reasons. How is it that capital is able to accumulate in the top and iterate in a long-standing manner in perpetuity? Well, you coerce a dominant political group with relative status in order to do so. So race becomes the weapon or the wedge, right? That has become evident and clear to me. And you see it manifest even more when there's greater scarcity. So when there's greater inequality, when there's greater despair, through economic downturns, one's identity and relative status becomes more paramount. One is willing to take a intermediary position the further away they are from an absolute position. So that is an understanding of how things have worked. But I also understand that we can do something different. And this is the point of perhaps, I wouldn't call it conscientious capitalism, because at the end, capitalism and socialism have become straw men in this world. Rarely is it practiced any pure form of capitalism or socialism. John Stewart did it well when he talked about how we practice socialism for companies and personal responsibility for individuals when we have great recessions. Right. So again, those are straw man terminologies. Where I am and what I'm trying to present is we need economic rights as part of our whole coalition of human rights. San Francisco Human Rights Commission was founded talking about civil rights, political rights, but economic rights as well. We've heard a lot of reference to Bayard Rustin, to Martin Luther King. They very much were talking about economic rights. This has gotten lost. This has gotten lost where we believe this notion that people can pull themselves up, can do it themselves. So that's a little tension that I think, I'm pretty sure that the message we're resonating is unified amongst us all. But if there is a potential distinction I want to make, and that is our power comes in collective action, in capturing a government to fulfill their fiduciary responsibility. And by the way, it is our government, and that is the vessel, I think, that can structure an economy and facilitate all human rights, which is civil, political, social, cultural, and don't forget economic rights, in an intentional, inclusive way. Because the default in our society is one of exclusion. Michael referenced where police started, right? If we don't understand that history, you all heard Nicole Hannah-Jones emphasize reparations. Well, reparations isn't, in my view, a vindictive punishment. It's an understanding that analytical problems today are grounded in history. So the inequality that exists today, if we're going to double down on property rights to the exclusion of human rights, economic rights, or any notion of how that property came to be distributed in the first place, is inadequate, immoral, and dishonest. So, we need reparations not only to restore a righteous capital base in the black community, I shouldn't have read restore, but to seed, but rather to change narratives going forward so that we ground inequality and poverty in what it is grounded in, which is resource deprivation, not a deficient population. But that's not the only thing. We need other policies as well, because reparations is retrospective, but prospectively we need structures and systems that ensure that going forward people have the resources they need to thrive as well.
Yeah. Listen, I'm just happy I understood what you were just saying. Okay? Because I wasn't the best economic student, but I understood that. Doctor, you mind if I just jump on the back of that?
Please.
Okay, since we're just having a conversation, we sit in our living room with our family members.
Yes.
So I was sitting there in a job, not fulfilled. I'm sure some of you guys have been in that position, not being valued, not living up to my God-given potential, right? And then you look at the statistics. We're underpaid. We're undervalued. The wealth gap is staggering today. COVID made it worse. Black men still today, their unemployment rate is 20% when the general market might be 10. The point is that, first of all, you got to know where you sit and what the statistics are. Like, you should be Googling yourselves, like, what's happening? What do people think about me? Where do I stand? What's happening with the money? Where does it flow? So that's the first thing. So I'm looking at all this. So I said, okay, I can sit here when expenses are going up, but you're going to get paid the same, because even when you have 20 years of experience, you can go to a new job, but they're not going to value what you're worth, right? Because it is a capitalistic marketplace. So I could get a promotion, new job, new title, but why is my pay like only increasing a little bit? And I'm like, that just must be for us. So not only do we need reparations, we're not even getting what we're worth when we work in corporate America. So I said I could sit here and take this, or I could honestly walk in my faith. I could stop praying every day and walking in my prayers, right? Because it takes a little courage to do that. So there's only two options. Take this little bit of money and spend less, or you can walk out and build a plan to make more. It is not complicated, people. We can take the crumbs that they want to give us, even when we've proven ourselves, even when we are the biggest creators of all time. And I said this yesterday, Instagram makes $5 billion a month on your stories, because I see all the likes. I see you trying to grow your profile, but you're getting nothing from it. They're getting everything. Or we can build our own, right? And I think we just have to come to a decision that we can do that. Now, it's our responsibility that when you reach out, we take your call, we respond, we build together, because then we're false prophets if we don't do that. Now, that don't mean reach out one time and then you get it. Don't get mad. You got to reach out a couple times, okay? Because I did have a sister if I reached out. I said, well, how many times? She said once. I was, shame on you, because I got like 5,000 people reaching out. But my point is that let's don't come together in this room. Let's not sit on, Dr. Sy and Dr. She says, stop calling Dr. Grant. Anyway, Dr. Grant's Cheryl, right? And all of this amazingness. And then we leave here the same way. Like, I would love to understand, what are we going to do together? How are we going to create together? How are we going to change our trajectory when we can? The whole rollback of affirmative action has us thinking about laws instead of about our economy. The rollback of taking history out the books diverts us from thinking about how do we build economy? How do we make money? They're all distractions and they're wrong, but they understand what they're doing. They want to keep us busy so that we can't get to the business of growing our capitalistic opportunities. I want y'all to know that. It's Jedi mind trick again.
So before we go to the audience, it wouldn't be right if I didn't talk about Beyonce and the celebrity effect, because what y'all are, I'm going to ask a question that I think many want to know. So, first I want to preface this by saying don't believe everything you read. I know that much. And I want to talk about the celebrity effect. And are we naive to think if we have unrelenting faith that this collective room could become the next Beyonce and Jay-Z? When we see stories about Jay-Z where the cousin asked for $4,800 to invest in his business, and the answer is no. Like, I got it out the mud, so you got to get it out the mud too. Like, what do we tell? Because we operate in a capitalistic society, the structure is set up so that there is someone on top, or a select percentage on top, and somebody is at the bottom. And so, like, what do we tell this room about that unrelenting faith that y'all are talking about the really going for it, the participation in the system? Like, what do we say? And how do we do that?
So, look, we got to be on the grind, no question about that. We also got to recognize that, Beyonce and Jay are anomalies at the scale they got into, but it's all proportional. Like, we can't be telling every single person, you're going to get your $4.5 billion in a concert. That's not going to be for every single person, but that does not mean you're not killing the game, right? Now, there is, the data of this is important, and on the media side, so I have my own firm, Atlas Strategy Group, but I'm also president of Next Level Sports. We're the only black-owned sports TV network in the country, right? And we did that intentionally, and it's going to be tied directly to your question here. Of the top 100 viewed shows last year, 94 were sporting events. 87 of those 94 were NFL games. Okay. So when we talk about Beyonce and the $4.5 billion that was generated, right? The reality is, like, if for anything else, I want y'all to pursue not just trying to be Beyonce and be on stage, but I want you to figure out like, yo, can you be the one that is the ticket processor and develop a better synergy on that? Can you be the one that is the excellent at lighting design, like Chromatic in LA, black woman firm that's running that? I want you to be the best one when it comes to, because that means everybody winning, right? Everybody winning and getting better about that intentionality of that there. In that same value proposition, the reason why it's important for us to look at this and see what's happening is too often we are only the consumers and not trying to be the creators and owning what's happening here, right? Michelle's talking about, when we're talking about the data, you know, we are intentional. Our text message platform is through community, because what I saw with community is that I could own the data. You leave Instagram, you leave X, you don't take that data with you. They keep it. That's the power. And I'm real intentional of, at the end of the day, how do I get valued? A lot of times it is the perception of your content, of your data, and the impact it have on other things. It was said earlier when the brother was speaking on the panel before us around the designs of everything. Algorithm discrimination is real, right? There's a reason why we talk about the new Jim Code, right? Right? And the intentionality that is happening on mapping out what is going on in our community. So yes, can you be the next one, whatever that may, I want you to be that, you know? And then bringing it back home. Policy is what gets me going. You know, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley said this beautifully a few months ago. She said policy is her love language, right? The reason why I rock in policy and politics is that for me, there is no greater way to create equity faster than good policy. Because we have seen how bad policy has disrupted us over and over again through isms. There's a big difference. Too often we conflate the two. Racism and prejudice are not the same thing. Everybody has some elements of prejudice. Isms is when you institutionalize it. And so whether it be the best entertainer, be the best at making sure we're showing on how we run our media entities, be the best in the economy, whether it be in consult, whatever that may be, find the ways that you are the one that's also killing the game. I always come back to faith because that's what I'm rooted in. It's not just about trying to be Jesus. Are you a good disciple? Because when you think about the majority of the Bible, whether you're Christian or not, it was the stories of Paul going to other places. You know, and too often we are getting too consumed with trying to be Beyonce and Jay, right? People talking about, well, I want to be LeBron. That's wonderful and great. You know what? I want to be his agent, right? That's where you need to be focusing on and manifesting those deals and mobilizing in that way. Lastly, in terms of the space that's here, and us being California in particular, I go back to sports and entertainment, because you look at Beyonce, you asked the question on Beyonce, going to the stadiums and the venues that happen there. In the next 5 years, it is the first time ever that for 5 consecutive years, there will be a global soccer competition happening in the US consecutively, where there's nothing bigger than soccer. We've seen that through World Cup, et cetera. And in San Francisco and in LA, you're gonna have opportunity because of World Cup and other things that are happening. These are those moments for how do we start preparing now and being focused on that. Because the reality is, if you have a major competition coming in, that means more concerts are coming. That means more events are happening. That means there's more continuity that's occurring. That's the reason why people are so upset, because they are afraid of the money that we gonna make.
Amen. Ashe. So we probably have time for 2 audience questions. And I see a hand back there, John Henry with the white baseball
I'll go
cap.
up there with the white baseball cap.
Greetings. Thank you all so much. I'm a New School alum as well, so shout out. 13th Street, 5th Avenue. I was blessed to sit in on Sister Michele's session yesterday, and shout out, I'm a native son. I'm here because Emil's a dear friend, and I'm proud to be a black gay man in these conversations where I always hear prophet, 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 and I just think it's important to call out the word ujama, you know, the real working together to gain wealth together, because sometimes I feel what I'm hearing, and I only know what I'm hearing, is still a very placement on oneself and not the collective. And I'm an artist, and I come from a place of just knowing so many of us have died and without much. Look at Ancestors or Neil Hurston and many others that still have works that are coming out that better us, that we can read silently alone. And so also thinking about economic literacy, because it seems like there's a jumping point of just knowing how to do it, when a lot of our folks can't count, and it's no shade, that's realistic. And what does that look like? And also I just love the idea and the reality of our indigenous ways of like susus. So I don't know if folks know about susus. Yeah, I can Google it, but that's all. Thank you.
So
Before the next question, I just like what Mike said. Community, let's be good disciples.
So I must say a unpopular, inconvenient truth. There is nothing that Black people can do collectively with regards to our spending, buying, or selling behavior in and of itself that's going to change the gross disparities that exist today in society. There's a book by Jared Ball called The Myth of Black Buying Power, which is brilliant. Another question, and I can say more, and some of it is grounded in the fact that the critical ingredient is capital itself. And you'll hear numbers about the amount of economic activity that we're involved in, the amount of spending that we do on a periodic basis. But those numbers, those large numbers, often aren't given in context. They often aren't accounting for the population as well. So if you do it in a per capita basis, and you were to do it in a comparison to white per capita numbers, or if you do it in even an owning of certain industries and businesses at a current moment in time, then that number that you hear becomes a little misleading. So that's sobering, but that's not the end of it. And I promise you I could say a lot more about that. Like one question is, why is that myth so powerful? It is widely accepted by Black people that are conservative, that are nationalistic, that are liberal. Across the spectrum, we want to believe that. It's alluring. It's powerful. Nobody wants to be a victim. We want to be able to be the masters of our destiny. It lets white people off the hook to a large extent. It lets government off the hook to a large extent. It shifts the onus of responsibility away from perhaps where it should lie. So, all that said, all that sobering information said, where is our power? Well, Michael said it in the fact that the most potent thing is the rules and structures of the game. So and by the way, I wouldn't discourage us from doing any of the stuff that's been recommended. It is inspiring and transformational what Michele does and has done. If I have children, I might encourage them to do certain activities and things. One other thing I'll say is, be careful when we tell people to work twice as hard to get by, because the other question is at what cost? Yeah. What is the consequence of that? Yeah. So our power lies in our collective action. Our power lies in capturing the structures, and namely the force of public power to create the rules and structures so that we can thrive. And we've had some success in society. The civil rights movement was pretty successful. It didn't complete it. We still have a long way to go, particularly in the domain of wealth. I see somebody looking at their watch, so I'm going to stop talking. But just put a button on it. This is not a dismal story, I'm telling you. It's an inconvenient truth, but it's a request that we not lose sight of where our most potent power, our most potent activity, which is collective action and rewriting the rules and structures.
And oftentimes, Darrick, the buying power data point is never associated or told with the net worth or wealth data point, which is when this narrative of Black buying power will be $2 trillion by 2043, but net wealth will be zero by 2050, then what are we doing?
Well, and so to that note, real quick, one, if you haven't checked out Operation Hope with John Hope Bryant, who talks about the language of money, directly to your question, is relevant to that point. John Hope Bryant, Operation Hope, they're doing incredible work cross country. Number two, we have to be very intentional of having teams assigned to reading the language in RFPs before they hit the street. Because a lot of time the language in these deals is the reason why we can't even win them. Because they'll put language in that makes you feel like you have a chance. Very fast, i.e. Mark Morial said it some years ago, where there was one RFP that had 70 pages, and literally there was one sentence in there that said the only winners could be previous winners. So you gotta be real intentional of finding these pieces. And then lastly, to Dr. Tsai's point around net worth itself, there's an effort that several of us are a part of, and transparently I'm a part of it as well, called Ready Life, which is led by Dr. Bernice King, the sole daughter of Dr. King, and Ashley Bell, specifically because when we talk about net worth, we have to get better around home ownership, right? And fundamentally, one concrete reason why we don't have more homes is because of the discrimination when it comes to credit scores. There's no good reason why you have a credit score associated if you pay your rent on time. Credit scores didn't start until 1989. Most folks don't realize that. And so the premise of this, to your question, is how do we get intention around the systems and the language within the systems so that then we can then unify, so that I can say, yo, Dr. Tsai, Dr. Cheryl, help me find the person that is an expert at reading this deal.
Yep, so for all my government folks in the room, this is going to have to be our last question, and I'm hoping that it produces answers that impart joy upon us on this beautiful Friday and does not leave us with living in the struggle. Hatim.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Hatim Mansouri, and I appreciate the discussion about the concept of a moral economy. I want to get your perspectives on what are the different tools can we use to achieve that best moral economy possible, and in terms of fair pricing, fair and equitable payment for the employees, and your thoughts on like 40-hour work week, boycotting, striking, UBI, et cetera. How can we achieve that best goal of the best possible moral economy?
He is also a Morehouse man.
I'll be quick. And by the way, I hate UBI but love guaranteed income. There's a more efficient, better way to do it. So I'll lead with that and say, and I'm going to be quick because we got panelists who got brilliant insights. 3 things. Start with the truth. So research, understanding, scholarship as it relates to understanding phenomena with some clear values is the beginning, but not the end. Translate that truth into action. So we have a concept of a moral economy we're developing, so that's the concept. And then how do you make it actionable? Guaranteed income, you mentioned some. Baby bonds, reparations, federalized credit scores or get rid of them altogether. Public banking as a baseline by which people get at least an account. You shouldn't be vulnerable to a bank to cash your check if you're poor. That's not fair, right? So we can come up with policies that ensure people have the resources they need. And then the final thing is public engagement, because all the great ideas, all the great policies are limited without action, without agitation and making sure that we're able to implement these rules and structures so that we can achieve what the questioner asked.
So I love all that. So I just want to talk about policy real quick. A brilliant campaign that was launched to sell beauty products is called the Crown Act. And 3 women got together and they said, you know what? We could sell product, we could do good, we can be morally right, we can allow black women and men to move with the hair they want, and they shouldn't be discriminated against. And when they brought policy into it, it literally changed the entire marketing game. It changed the entire way to sell product. I just read in the news that somebody's standing on the Crown Act in Texas because a young man got suspended because they're trying to hold that against him. So when you think about creating policy and being smart about it and using it as a marketing tool, literally, it changed the entire game. So now we can stand on policy in different ways. And the last thing that I want to say is that I got to say something about Beyonce and Jay-Z because I've never met them. I haven't sat at dinner with them. I don't see them going to church. I don't really know who they are. So I'm really not trying to be like anybody unless I literally know them. I know who they honor. Like, money is not a determining factor to want to be like somebody. So if you're going to want to be like somebody, know who they are, know how they move, know who they honor, know how they're praying, know what they've had to sacrifice in order to stand on the biggest stage in the world. And I don't know. So I just want to be like people I know that I've met, right? And so I would be really, really clear about that, because we live in a society that is so easy to follow people because of what they wear, how many followers they have, how much money they have, and we got to stop doing that, right? We got to understand. The last thing I want to say is that everything we've talked about is literally understanding the rules of engagement, like digging in. Whether you're at work, know the culture. Whether you're talking about policy, understanding what's going on. If you're signing a contract, knowing what's in it. We're so fast. We're in this generation that moves so fast. We want stuff right away. We just want to get it done. We want $5 instead of waiting on the 10. You gotta know the rules of engagement. You gotta pay attention. And if you don't know how to do it, have people on your team, in your family, in your community that can help you understand before you engage.
To the question around tools, look, there's many folks that are doing dope things, and we just got to figure out how you connect with them, right? So, National GEM Consortium, Black and Latino students getting masters and PhDs in STEM, and when we talked about the HBCU satellite that was referenced yesterday, how do we make that happen out here? When you think about what's going on with GoFundMe and their whole Black Joy initiative, right? And the amplification that you shouldn't just go there when there's a crisis, but go there for good. So there's specific tools. When it comes to contracts, I'm always real clear. I'm sick and tired of folks looking at Black and minority as small. They are not the same, okay? And so be very intentional of how we structure these deals in the private sector, not just in the public sector, so that we can all win and really mobilize in that way. And then, lastly, to tie it together in terms of like the tools that we have to be thinking about. We are in a moment where the amount of money going out and hitting these streets can be transformational if we get better at coming together around different syndicates. And not just syndicates in terms of the investment of the deal, but actually having real conversation of, you excel at that, I excel at this, let's figure out how we put the team together there. So, we've been building out this effort across the country called Kairos. If you want to rock with us, we welcome y'all doing that. Atlas Strategy Group, that's our team itself. But whenever you go, I'm an organizer by nature, so I see y'all got your phones, right? All right, so take your phone out real quick. Because one thing I can't stand is that we do these brilliant conversations and we actually can't mobilize from here. Because the other side does that real well. January 6th didn't just happen by chance. There was organizing that was happening. So 917-983-0800. 917-983-0800. Text the word Kairos. Because at the end of the day, we need to keep building this. Kairos, K-A-I-R-O-S, 917-983-0800, so that we can actually keep building as a people. We can't let Dr. Sai and Dr. Cheryl be fighting this by themselves. Because what's happening here needs to become a prototype across the rest of the country. And in order for us to do that, we got to be ready.
Brilliant. So with that, let's show love to Michele Ghee, Darrick Hamilton, Michael Blake. Thank y'all so much.